The world's two largest economies, the US and China, are in a trade war. What was supposed to be US versus the world is now essentially a reduction to one-on-one between the US and China, even as Donald Trump remains unrelenting in his stance against China. The latter has called for dialogue, urging the U.S. to meet it halfway in trade talks. China's Commerce Ministry spokesperson said, quote, "The door to dialogue is open, but it must be based on mutual respect and connected in an equal manner." China has levied 84% tariffs on U.S. goods in retaliation to the 125% tariffs imposed by U.S. on Chinese goods. Terming Trump's moves unilateralism and economic coercion, China says that it is ready to fight till the end in the case of a tariff war. Questioned whether a 125% tariff is technically an embargo on China, the U.S. president said that he's hopeful of Xi negotiating a deal that will benefit both the countries. Take a listen.
I think that President Xi is a man who knows exactly what has to be done. He's a very smart man. He loves his country. I know that for a fact. I know him very well. And I think he's going to want to get to a deal. I think that's going to happen. We'll get a phone call at some point, and it'll be off to the races. It'll be a great thing for them. It'll be a great thing for us. It's going to be a great thing for the world and for humanity.
But for now, global markets seem to be relieved by President Trump's 90-day tariff pause for most countries. While China is aggressively looking to forge an alliance against the U.S., most Southeast Asian economies are reluctant to align with it given their reliance on the U.S. market. However, after President Trump's tariff pause, Asian markets rallied, with Taiwan market gaining 9.3%. Nikkei at 225 closing 9.13% higher, and Topix index advancing 8.9%. South Korea's Kospi index surged 6.6%, while small cap Kosdaq gained 5.97%, and Australia's S&P ASX 200 rose 4.54%. The European market also rose sharply in opening session. Stocks across the board surged to place all individual sector firmly in positive territory. The positive sentiment in European markets was boosted by the EU pausing its counter tariffs on the United States.
We want to negotiate. We want to talk. We appreciate that you have brought this pause on so-called reciprocal tariffs, and we in turn are now pausing our proposed countermeasures in order that we have the maximum space to consult with our member states, consult with our industry, and negotiate with the US. We're ready to make deals. Let's talk.
Amid the looming uncertainty over President Trump's tariffs, U.S. citizens raised concern over inflationary pressure on daily commodities. Earlier, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell warned of high inflation and slow growth in the United States.
Well, I think we have to. Yeah, I think we have to, because otherwise you're going to be in real trouble economically, in debt. Because if you spend more than what you get, that's going to be a lot of trouble. So
I think that the tariffs are horrible. I think that is like privatizing America, and instead of America being a country for the people, it's a corporation for the rich. And it's just for them to get richer while the poor get poorer. And that's basically how I feel.
Meanwhile, India is looking to leverage the 90-day pause in tariffs to its advantage. Reports suggest that India and U.S. are working to conclude the first part of their trade deal this year. The two countries are looking to reach two-way trade worth $500 billion by the year 2030. It's even being said that India is mulling increasing scrutiny on low-cost imports to prevent potential dumping of goods, including from China. All right, for more on this, we are now being joined on this broadcast by Adam Schwartz, who is a writer and political commentator. Thank you so much for joining us on WION. First off, let's talk about President Trump's U-turn. It has led to a lot of speculation on, first of all, why he's doing it, and is it only about tariffs, or is there a bigger game at play here?
Well, it's absolutely right. I mean, I would start off by saying that I think this is really one of the biggest government U-turns on a global stage that we've really seen in modern history. I would say that it's sort of quite spectacularly embarrassing for Donald Trump, and I would say quite damaging for the kind of credibility of his threats going forward. But really, if we listen to what he said at the White House yesterday after the announcement, it's clear that the decision wasn't really based on the official reasoning, which was that dozens of countries were suddenly coming to him to negotiate, but actually more due to the market reaction and actually primarily due to the rapid deterioration in US treasuries and US bond markets, which really, if it continued in the way that it was yesterday, could have actually compromised US financial institutions and really led to market and systemic failure, which would have been economically devastating. But I would say that, primarily the market reaction that we've seen is not really due to the reduction or the temporary reduction in tariffs that we've seen over the next 90 days, but really due to what the U-turn really represents, and that is the fact that markets have demonstrated an ability to constrain Donald Trump, and really where we've seen an absence of the ability of US democracy to place any kind of constraints on Donald Trump's behavior. Actually, we have seen some recognition by officials or people in the Trump administration of certain realities that mean that the US cannot pursue this kind of reckless or dramatic trade policy that many people consider to be quite sort of suicidal economically. So I'd say that, of course, we have seen quite a sharp rise in the market since then, but actually really looking forward, there's still a huge amount of uncertainty in the market, particularly as you mentioned, there's still the tariffs on China, which seem to be escalating every day. We have the fact that we still have 10% tariffs across the board, and we have higher tariffs on areas like car imports and steel imports into America. But primarily, the issue is for global economies and the American economies is actually going to be uncertainty, because 90 days may seem like a long time compared to what we've seen over the last week, but actually when you're trying to negotiate with dozens of countries on trade, actually 90 days is very short, because typically it takes years or sometimes even decades for countries to negotiate on trade. So I would say that even though this is some relief, actually there's still a very significant threat to the US and global economy.
And do you see this as impacting businesses long term as well?
I mean, I certainly would. Obviously, it depends on where those businesses are located. And of course, Donald Trump, one of his reasonings that he's given for the tariffs is trying to repatriate some businesses back into the United States, particularly on manufacturing. But actually, given the fact that America has behaved quite erratically on tariffs and really put them on and off in such, kind of flippant ways, means that I actually think that a lot of businesses will be deterred from investing in the United States, because ultimately America under Trump is not proving to be a reliable business environment. Obviously, businesses need certainty about the costs they're going to face and how they're going to be able to import and export. And the reality is that they're not getting that. And of course, Donald Trump has been bragging over the past few days about the fact that not only companies but governments have been coming to him and begging him for tariff reprieves and exemptions. And I think that really cuts to the heart of actually what these tariffs are really about. And they're not necessarily about Trump trying to rebalance trade or get rid of trade deficits, but actually because of the massive personal opportunities that it creates for Donald Trump, because you have loads of companies and governments basically begging the United States presidents to do anything to reduce the tariffs. So I think still, companies are going to be quite worried about what they see, and ultimately we're going to see a reduction in investment, not just in the United States, but globally, which we know if lasts for long enough actually leads to countries slipping into recession.
Thank you so much for all of that. Adam Schwartz joining us on WION this morning. Of course, we'll be following this story very closely, and I look forward to speaking to you again very soon. It seems like things are changing by the minute as we speak.
Good to be with you.